What is going on, everyone? Today we have the AROS Master version of the RTX 5070. We're going to be checking it out in all the resolutions, so 4K, 1440, and 1080 on Dying Light 2. And we will be pairing it with a 9800X3D CPU. And as usual, I'm not manually overclocking anything, and all my drivers are up to date at the time of this video. And if I could take a moment to please ask you to subscribe if you get something out of this. Watch the video. If you deem it worthy of a subscription, I would love to have it. And with all that said, let's jump into the video. Alright, let's jump straight into it. This is the very low setting. Right now we are not upscaling at all. We're just on very low, and as you can see, it's running just fine. We don't have any RTX enabled at the moment. This is just pixel for pixel, totally native 1440p resolution. And we are right around 190 FPS, so we can absolutely get this game to look better and maintain nice performance. We've got plenty of insurance as far as those frames go. So let's throw a little bit more demand at this and see how far we can get. So the next level we're going to do is, of course, just go up through the different settings, turn that quality, turn that upscaler back off of quality and back on no upscaling. We're going to do like a controlled test here because the game actually just enables upscaling all the time, even when you don't really need it. Because as you can see here, we're at 182 FPS. And again, this is just the low setting, so one up from very low. It leaves a little bit to be desired. This game does have ray tracing, two actual sets of ray tracing presets that we're going to explore. So at 1440, we're looking pretty good. This title runs really well. I just tested the 5060 Ti. That video is available up here. I'll put it on the screen now. If you're considering this card versus that card, you know, those are kind of like that price point that people are wondering, should I go up to the 5070? Hopefully this will make that decision easier for you, because that's the whole point of these, is I'm trying to give you guys an informed decision. None of these cards are necessarily cheap, so yeah, I want to make sure that everything that you're seeing here can be what you expect whenever you go out and start to build your PC or consider a pre-built. But right here we're at 206 FPS on the medium preset. Again, this is completely native. I'm going to skip this, so of course we can go up. Let's check it out on the next setting, which would be high, and I believe it wants me to restart after the high setting, or maybe it's the very high. Yeah, I think, okay, it's the very high, so we'll restart after this. Alright, so we are at 135 FPS here, and again, this is completely native, so nothing here is necessarily concerning to me at all. We're going to be able to get a very nice performing experience here as we go through some more of these settings, especially at 1440p. Now we are going to go through 1080 and 4K, so be sure to use that black bar at the top to, skip ahead if you need to. That's fine. That's what I make these videos for, is just a lot of comprehensive data, so you can use these videos to make an informed decision on what you're buying. All right, so let's just hop down here and go up to the next preset. Now it probably will ask me to restart as I jump up to that ray tracing. Even if it doesn't, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Yeah, it says I need to restart. All right, I'm going to restart, come right back. All right, so we are back after a restart. This is the very first level of ray tracing. I just want to go through and make sure that everyone understands exactly where we're at. We're at 1440p, the first level of ray tracing. There is another one after this. We are currently not doing any upscaling and no frame generation, and everything down here is as set. So as you increase this field of view and decrease it, you can get a little bit more results because you're actually loading in more of the screen. We're just going to leave that on the default setting for this test. That's completely personal and up to you, but just call out that can slightly affect the performance. All right, so right now we are at 124 FPS. Let's just hop over here. Doing really well. So this ray tracing setting performs exceptionally nicely. Again, this is completely native. We're not even doing any upscaling. So I'm just going to go straight up to that next level because, as I stated, we have so much headroom on our frames per second that we can absolutely give up a little bit of that for a nicer experience, because I think a better looking title is a better experience than something like just tons and tons of frames. I'd rather have a nicer looking game at 60 or 100 FPS than something that looks okay but runs at like 250. I don't know what we're going to experience once we turn on this frame generation, but right now, with everything set to completely native, we are right here around 60. So you can honestly just frame generate from here if you want to. and that will be a pretty nice experience, honestly. So let's check that out. I'm just not going to do any upscaling right now. We're going to go through this a little by little. That will turn on the reflex. I'm going to go ahead and enable boost. It might as well. All right, so frame generation is on. Boost is enabled, and we are not doing any upscaling. We're still at 1440p at the highest possible ray tracing setting. Let's go ahead and save that and jump back into it. And as you can see here, we gave a little bit of VRAM up, not too much. We're still under 8. There is 12 on this card. So just calling that out, that you have plenty of VRAM left over. I don't like to recommend a setting that is like using every ounce of VRAM, because there are different scenarios in games, and you don't want to get to an area where there might be a little bit more VRAM demand and start to have stutters and have to go mess with your settings and break your immersion and all that stuff. So really the additional VRAM here is a good thing. So we have 12 on this card. We're using 8. We're actually using 6.5. We're allocating 8, so it's actually a better result than even that. So right here, you're looking good. I mean, you're at 97 FPS. So let's just jump down to this next setting over here. So we're going to jump over to DLSS quality, and we are going to turn off the frame generation, because I want to go through some of these DLSS settings to see what we can do without any frame generation at all, and just see what numbers we get there. So again, all the information is going to be on that black bar at the top, and yeah, everything should be very accurate as far as like the settings. That way you don't have to like remember and all that junk. I like to list them up there for you at all times. And again, the RTX driver version is listed in the little dialog box in the bottom left. But with DLSS quality, it gives us about the same experience as a native with frame generation. So this looks really good, exceptionally good actually. I can't really tell the difference between quality and native. Some people with eagle eyes might be able to see it, but I certainly can't. And I'm not zooming in at 10x and studying every little pixel, so that's not how I play a game anyway. I don't think that's accurate to do it in the first place. So yeah, for the most part though, you're looking at 105, 102 FPS here. Let's go up here. There's going to be a dialog box, which I'll skip. All right, just skip that little tooltip thing they give you all the time. Anytime I restart, it makes me have to listen to that guy again. All right, so we're at 94 FPS here. Now let's jump over here and click on the next option. Let's go up a little bit. Let's go to balance. So this will be a little bit less demand. This is about a 58% upscale. And that gave us a little bit. You're at 112, 113 FPS here with a VRAM allocation of 6.1. So, going down in that base resolution really helps your VRAM out, and that makes sense. It totally tracks, because DLSS does use a little bit more VRAM to perform that upscale, but it's a net positive gain, because you're going down in that base resolution so much that you get back a lot more VRAM than if you were to just consider the upscale algorithm on top of like a native thing. So the drop in base resolution gives you a lot more of a break on your VRAM. Not that you necessarily need it, but I just like to call out, kind of the technical aspects of what's going on here. But yeah, everything looks pretty good. 107 to 126 as I look out. Now there's a little bit more junk over here, so we'll look over here. And that's about a 110, 112. So about a 10 FPS swing between something that's a little bit more open and an area that's a little bit more closed off and crowded. So, I like to call that out too, because, your FPS is not going to perform identically across the entire aspect of a whole game. So just having that variance is nice. All right, so let's just keep going here. Let's jump over to DLSS, go to performance. Now performance will definitely start to look a bit softer, but you do get back a little bit of performance. Of course, that's why it's called performance. But yeah, I mean, there's 130 FPS for you. Now we're not doing any frame generation right now, so once we do some frame gen, we'll use a little bit more of that VRAM, but again, we got plenty. So let's just go back to a quality upscale, because we've already seen how it performs, with the native upscaling, or the native, not upscaling, I guess I should say. But yeah, let's go back to quality and let's go to frame generation. Let's turn that on and let's hit that boost. Go ahead and get that clock speed up to the max. All right, so right now with DLSS quality and frame generation, we are looking at 130 FPS on average here. Everything looks really nice. Well, actually, the average is about 119, 118, but that's also averaging some of the past metrics that we've had, so that'll start to straighten itself out. But right now, kind of looking at the live FPS, I'm guessing about 128 would be about the average on this particular setting. So anyway, we're just going to keep looking over here. If I jump down there, I'm going to get the, you're leaving the mission warning thing or whatever, so I'm just going to stick to this rooftop. But yeah, we're looking good. 130 something FPS. That's not bad at all. Not too shabby whatsoever. All right, let's jump over here and let's see what it looks like with a little bit more DLSS, but leaving that frame generation turned on. All right, so this would be DLSS balanced with frame generation. You're about 140 FPS. I don't know if it's worth it going past quality because honestly, quality alone without frame generation is a super smooth experience. I don't even think you might not even really need frame generation unless you just want to use it because you have it, kind of thing. But yeah, you're about 140 FPS here. Let's jump over and go to that next setting. I'm just going to try to bulldoze through these as quick as I can because we've got a lot to cover because we're going to do 4K and 1080 here. Now 1080 is going to be pretty quick because honestly it's going to run fine. The 5060 Ti ran fine. I expect no different out of the 5070. Yeah, 163 FPS here with frame gen and performance DLSS. Now what I'm going to do is jump over to 4K and I'm going to go probably through the exact same setup for the most part. Might not get it exactly, but I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. So let's go ahead and enable the 4K resolution to see how that runs. So we got, let's see, we're at 3840 by 2160 here. So this is 16 by 9 4K. Let's go ahead and see what it runs like with no upscaling and without any frame generation. So we're going to go ahead and turn all this off. And we're going to jump down to the low quality preset and just keep going, kind of make it a layer by layer comprehensive kind of test. We're going to restart and I'll be right back. All right, so I've already come up here on the roof, cut through this little dialogue thing because I did restart. So this is 4K on very low. So we're at about 100 FPS experience with no upscaling and no frame generation, of course. We're not really going to dive into that too much on these settings. If you're going to run very low, you can kind of guess it's going to be a perfectly good experience, nothing to write home about. All right, so 96, let's go up a little bit. Let's go up to the next level, which is quality. They're automatically doing that stuff. Drives me nuts. All right, I wish games would just make it to where whatever you clicked was the only thing that changed. All right, so let's double check just to make sure. All right, so yeah, no frame gen, no boost, no reflex, nothing like that. 4K. All right, this looks good. No upscaling, low quality. All right, so that gives us about 96 FPS, so not a huge difference, honestly, between this and very low, about 8 FPS maybe. So, just kind of take that in consideration. These different presets aren't too far apart, so let's just go on up to medium just to kind of get through it because I know everyone really just wants to see the ray tracing because that's what I want to see. I don't really care too much about all these things because I know it's going to run right. But I want to be able to show people what it looks like at all the different possible settings because again, my goal is to help you make an informed decision about the GPUs you're looking at and the hardware you're running because none of this is cheap and it is just a way that I can give back. That's what I'm all about here. If you want to give back, you can subscribe. How do you like that segue? There you go. All right, so 80 FPS here. So looks pretty good. Medium settings. Yep, everything looks nice. Really just going to be up to you. It's all personal choice, of course. Let's go through. Yeah, there it is, making me do the upscaling. All right, let's go ahead and jump back into here. So this is high. This is the highest you can go without ray tracing, and you're looking at 70 FPS here at 4K with no upscaling. All right, so let's just go ahead and call this like, yeah, this is going to run fine because you can do DLSS, you can frame gen. I'm just probably going to try not to kill myself in the process. All right, so right now you're at 70 FPS. All right, so let's just take a look. I'm just curious what it would do with a little bit of upscaling. So let's go ahead and turn on that quality. Yes, okay, so with upscaling on the highest preset without ray tracing, you're at about 100 FPS experience with no frame generation. All right, so you can kind of figure that with frame generation, this is going to be about 120, 130. That's a conservative estimate, but let's just go ahead and check it out just so you can see. If you don't really care too much about that ray tracing, you can turn this on, do some frame generation. Game needs to turn on the, okay, that's fine. Let's restart. All right, so it wants me to restart. So I'm gonna restart, come back. All right, so let's jump into it here. Right now we are on the current settings. We are at 4K. Everything looks good. DLSS quality is set, and we've got Reflex on boost with frame generation. All right, so this is the highest you can go without introducing any ray tracing on the quality DLSS setting with some frame generation thrown in there. So I was a little, it seems like I was a little too high. I thought it was going to be about a 120 experience, 120 to 130, but it looks like about a well, there's 120, but barely. I'm just going to say this doesn't really add too much, because I think we were, you know, looking like it adds maybe 20, 30 more frames on average. I don't know if that's worth it to you, but I mean, might as well, because your frames are high enough to enable that frame generation. It's not like you're generating from like 30 or 40. But now once we turn on this ray tracing, that is what I'm most concerned with, especially on a card with 12 gigabytes of VRAM. But we're going to see. So I'm just going to jump over and turn on this ray tracing. Now it may want me to restart, I don't know, but if it does, of course, I'll just cut that out of the video. So let's go back to a no upscaling experience just to get a base frame rate. All right, so let's turn all this off. We are at 4K right here, no upscaling, no frame generation. And let's come up here and go to this ray tracing setting. It's going to try to make me force that on there. Okay, so 4K, no reflex, no upscaling, no frame generation. So this is the very lowest preset for ray tracing and a native experience at that. So right now you're just shy of 60. Like, it's not too bad. You can definitely kick on some DLSS and get that up. And then frame generation, of course, will just get you even higher. But right now, our VRAM allocation is at 9.1. All right, so let's pay attention to that, because that's creeping up there. Not too bad. We still got a little extra, but I'm just going to hop down here, give you guys a little something different to look at. I know it's kind of the same thing over and over, but I don't like to jump around too much, because I don't want to, you know, start a story element and break my concentration, and I also don't want to like break the test. You know, like I want to make sure that all these settings are in kind of a similar environment, because you are comparing them all to each other. So I don't want to venture out too far from the original place that I started my test. So right now you're around 60 FPS. So, you know, nothing bad at all. Let's see what some DLSS does though. Jump in here. Okay, so no upscaling. Quality DLSS is like a no-brainer. I mean, it's fine. It looks really good, especially at 4K. You're upscaling from such a high base resolution that it looks, you know, just as good. I know a lot of people say like, oh, it's upscaling, it's never going to look just as good. I'm telling you, it looks almost identical, if not the same. That's just my own 40-year-old eyes. So, you know, if you want to split hairs, maybe you can zoom in at 10x and see a difference or whatever. I don't do that. That's not how I play games. So, you know, if you want a nice, steady frame rate with a very sharp, very good-looking image, quality DLSS is absolutely just a no-brainer. And this is a forced quality upscale, so this is the 4 model, so this is DLSS 4. Unfortunately, this game doesn't have a 2x, 3x, and 4x with frame generation, but I am forcing the upscaling model to the latest. And I'll make sure to stick that down in that corner as well, so you'll be able to see it if you haven't already. But yeah, we're at about an 83, 81 FPS experience here. Now we can toss in some frame generation on top of this and get a really nice experience. So let's see, let's go quality DLSS. Of course, we are at the normal ray tracing setting, and we're just going to go to quality and then turn on some frame gen. All right, so let's make sure that boost is enabled. So this is the quality DLSS at the normal ray tracing preset, and that's going to give you 101 FPS. Now I do want to call something out. Since we are doing an upscale, we got a break on our allocated VRAM and thus our used VRAM, because as you go down in that resolution and then upscale from it, yeah, you're using a little bit to actually perform that upscaling, you know, technology, that algorithm. But what you gain back by, you know, lowering that resolution in the background is a net positive gain. So, you know, if you can stand to look at DLSS, there's really nothing wrong with using something like quality or even balanced. And to be honest, performance even on 4K looks really good because you're upscaling from 1080 on performance. So it's a pretty nice resolution anyway, and there's enough of that information to build a 4K image from. But let's just take a look and go through it step by step. You know, I told you this would be pretty comprehensive, so I'm going to stick to my word here and go back to DLSS balance with no frame gen. Turn this off so we are at the bottom ray tracing, and we are going to just stick with balanced DLSS with no frame gen and see how that performs and see how it looks too, because I'm curious. You get a little bit of smearing in these these little cattail looking things, but only in the distance. Like these up here are pretty sharp, but as I back up, and I'm really only seeing it in this like cattail stuff right here, these weeds. Everything else looks nice and sharp though. You know, and I've noticed that on every resolution, and even sometimes they look a little bit, you know, kind of smeary. As you can see, as I back up, you're going to kind of see that resolution pop in and out. All right, so there's that one. Look right here where this dot is. As I walk forward, boom, there's some more detail. So as you can see, it loads in more detail. Then as I get closer, it's probably, yeah, it's nice and sharp now. So it's just a distance thing, really. All right, so I just want to call that out. That's about the only anomaly I have seen in this title with DLSS. And it kind of happens at all the different DLSS settings, so just keep that in mind. It's not super distracting. It's not like you're studying the weeds in the game, but you know, just call out what I see. That's all I'm doing here. All right, so balanced DLSS. Let's go down to performance and see what that does for us. Now, performance looks really damn good too, and that's going to give you 110 FPS and a huge break on your VRAM. I mean, you're talking like half of like the allocated, or half of the VRAM on the card is all that's being allocated right now. And that's going to run really well. That's going to give you tons of headroom for like any sort of event that might pop up later on in the game, where it might suddenly demand more VRAM. It's going to make sure that it's not having to like jump down into the system RAM to render that scene or risk a crash, you know, stuff like that. But this is going to be a really good experience. So I'm just going to come over here and we're going to go back to the balanced preset and see what it looks like with a little bit of frame gen, and then we're going to go up to that next level of you know, the next level of ray tracing here. So right now we are on frame generation, balanced DLSS with reflex set to boost, and we're at 4K. All right, so let's save this, jump back into it, and that looks like a 124 FPS experience. Now, you know, balance looks almost as good as the quality, if not just, I mean, it looks just fine. You know, there's nothing that I'm going to sit here and say like, oh, it's definitely the same exactly, but for what you're getting out of it, you know, you're getting a break on your VRAM, which allows you to do the frame generation, because when you use that VRAM to frame generate, it's good to have some of that VRAM, you know, given back to you by going on, you know, up on your DLSS setting. That's just kind of like for all games. You know, as you go up on your DLSS setting, you're going to get a VRAM break, and that's going to give you a lot more VRAM to do the frame generations. That's kind of how those things work. So finding a good balance is important, you know, as far as like how much VRAM you're using and what you're doing with that VRAM, because, you know, you might be able to put up with, say, a performance DLSS setting, which allows you to go much higher on your, you know, kind of detail, like high, medium, that kind of stuff, enable ray tracing even, so you can give yourself a lot of that VRAM back and then frame generate with that VRAM that you've saved by using DLSS. So, you know, there you go. That's kind of like my little, you know, in a classroom nutshell kind of thing on VRAM. But let's just jump into it here. Let's come down to performance. So we're going to go performance with nothing else changed. So we're going to go performance DLSS with that frame generation. See how it looks at 4K here. So that's about 102. Well, actually, I spoke too soon. 130 FPS. Looks like the frame gen kicked in last minute. And right now we are allocating 7.9 gigs and utilizing 6.5. So the next leg of this test will definitely be the hardest one. It's going to be the full ray tracing experience. So let's jump over here, go to high quality ray tracing, and we're going to turn that reflex off. We're going to go no upscaling, no frame gen. And this is going to give us like the most difficult setting to run in the game. We're just going to see how that goes. All right, so that gives us 31 FPS, and we are utilizing 7.7 gigs of VRAM and allocating 9.1. So this is good to see because it tells me that our VRAM is not going to be an issue in this title, because everything that we do from this point forward outside of frame generation is only going to help the VRAM. So right now what I would probably do, and this is what I would do as far as like how I would play this title, I would like to get about 60 FPS before I frame generate, but I want to retain as much VRAM as I can so that when I do that frame generation, it's not held back by like hitting a wall with VRAM, which I don't think that we're going to experience that at all. So I would probably do a little bit of upscale and then do some frame generation, but I want to see what it looks like with just the quality DLSS upscaling. All right, I'm back. Unfortunately, I did experience a crash with that last setting, but you know, I am changing settings quite a bit and very rapidly, so that can make the game start to perform a little bit unstable, and I do run into crashes way more than probably anyone else would, just because I am changing settings so often. But anyway, let's jump back into it. So this is high quality ray tracing at 4K, DLSS quality. Now it's not giving me 60, and like I said, on 4K, really going down to performance still looks really, really good. I'm going to jump over to balanced though and check out what that does. But as you can see here, going down to just quality gave us back like almost 3 gigs of VRAM. So very important to, you know, use your DLSS. I mean, you're absolutely paying for one of the best upscalers on the market, so use it. It looks really, really good, and that's just part of, you know, owning an NVIDIA card. You get that really nice upscaling technology. All right, so on balanced DLSS, we are at 65 FPS here, and it looks remarkably good. You know, I'm not going to say it looks exactly like native, because it probably doesn't if you zoom in with 10x and, you know, study pixel for pixel. But for me, from 2 feet away on a 32-inch monitor, it looks no freaking different. Okay, it just looks no different to me at all, and it only gives you more VRAM back and a better performing title. So let's just jump over to the next level, because I would like to feel really comfortable with those base frames before I frame generate. So that gives me a lot of insurance here. Now at performance, I am noticing a slight degradation in some of the textures, especially ones that are far away like this. As you can see here, that smearing is still present in these little cattails and the grass, but you know, that's just part of what this game does with the upscaling. This game also has a lot of pop-in just naturally. I don't think that that's necessarily the fault of the card. That's just what the developers have decided. As you can see, as I go back and forward, you can see a lot of that pop-in coming in. So that's just the game. So for whatever it's worth, if you see that, that's just the game doing its thing. That's just what they've decided, how they want to manage resources. So anyway, here at Performance DLSS, we can jump in and do some frame generation and turn that boost on. All right, so now we have a really good experience at 4K. I mean, we've got 105 FPS here, and that gives me a lot of confidence knowing that it looks really sharp. Performance looks absolutely just great. I mean, there's nothing really bad that I can say, because it gives you back so much more of your resources. You're at 7.7 gigs of allocated VRAM, and you're utilizing 6.2. No spilled VRAM whatsoever, and you're at 99 FPS here. And of course, that's because that base frame rate is in the 70s. So it performs really, really well at these settings. So you can absolutely run 4K on this title with this card. You know, if you want to use some DLSS, then you know you're going to be fine. Now, what I would like to do on top of that, just to make this more comprehensive, is see what it looks like with a balanced and a quality DLSS with that frame gen on. So as you can remember, this was just under 60. I believe it was around 55. So with that frame generation turned on with a quality DLSS, which again, to me, it looks just as good as native. I mean, I can't tell. And that's with so many titles. DLSS 4 is remarkably good. All right, so we're at 80 FPS here with that frame gen turned on. Now, as far as responsiveness, feels just fine. We're running about a 55 FPS base frame rate here. So with the frame gen, it still feels really good. You know, I could probably play at this no problem. Some people are kind of more sensitive to, you know, things like base resolutions and what frame generation does. I really just wanted to make sure that my VRAM was okay, because we're utilizing a much better version of the DLSS with that quality, so it's going to eat up a little bit more VRAM, but right now we're at 8.3 gigs of allocated VRAM, so that tells me we've got plenty to do this frame generation. It's not running into any kind of problems at all. So let's just drop down and go to balanced. All right, so this would be balanced with that frame generation. And of course, this is on the high quality preset, and that's going to give you right around 100 FPS, just shy of it. There we go, we just touched 100 as I looked at that wall, so it's going to swing a little bit. As I look out here, you're going to go up, and as I look over here, it's a little bit more dense. You're going to go down just a hair. Yeah, so there's 108, 110 FPS. So anyway, yeah, 4K is completely doable. Just use your DLSS and your frame gen. You've got the VRAM to do it, and the card itself has the horsepower to give you some nice frames even at native. So that tells me that the DLSS will only improve your situation. All right, so with that said, I'm going to use the last part of this to just test out 1080p. I'm not going to go through every little thing because 1080p, honestly, like this thing is probably pretty much overkill for 1080p. So I'm just going to leave it on these settings here. So 1920 by 1080. We're going to go native, no upscaling, no frame gen, turn all this off. Let's see what it looks like with the absolute highest preset on native. And yeah, we're going to keep that resolution. All right, so that gives us 112 FPS. And of course, this is completely native, full-blown ray tracing, all the way maxed out. And you're at over 100 FPS experience, and you're not having to utilize DLSS or frame generation. Your VRAM is right there at 5.7 gigs of used. So let's just check it out. Let's keep on going here. Let's see what some frame generation does, because again, we just don't even need upscaling because it's just that damn good. All right, so let's see, 143 FPS with that frame generation turned on. So 1080p is an absolute cakewalk for this card on this title. All right, so let's just keep going over here. Jump over here. Everybody wants to see all the resolutions, so let's do it. Why not? All right, so this will be DLSS quality. Let's turn that frame gen off. I'm just going to go through the DLSS settings here. So 154, 160 FPS here. So if you're really trying to max out a panel, like a 240 hertz panel, you can definitely take care of that on this game with some DLSS and some frame generation. You know, let's see what it takes to get there. Just kind of throwing out a goal that I can hit. So let's try a performance, and let's go see what that does. We might not need frame gen. We might need some frame gen to hit 240. I'm just kind of thinking like a lot of people might have a 240 hertz refresh panel that they want to run this title on at 1080p. So it looks like 186 FPS here. All right, so let's jump over here, go back. Let's turn on some frame gen and kick that boost on. All right, it did it for us. All right, let's go back, save that, come back in. All right, so we are at a 203 FPS, 213. Looks like the game itself is kind of just hitting a wall around 200. So look like that frame gen looks like that frame gen doesn't really do too much for us with these settings. So let's go back down to just ray tracing and see if that gives us 240. Just out of curiosity, what would it take to get the 240? Really not doing anything. I think that the game might have a maybe a harder limit on it. Okay, so there's only 113 FPS. So it looks like around 200 FPS. The game just is like, no man, that's fine. That's plenty. Because we're throwing everything at this thing, and really it should be much higher. But I think that the game itself, a lot of games do that. They have like the engine itself just isn't coded to go any higher. So if you're maxing out the engine of the game, I can pretty much say that you're not going to have any problem with this title at this resolution with the RTX 5070. All right, so this was a very long video. Your support means the world to me. If you're new here, please subscribe. If you're not new, thanks for coming back. Please share my video with anyone you think might be interested in this topic. And with that said, I'm going to wrap it up, and everyone have a great day. Peace.